Hi, my name is Sean Mabry. I'm a writer, and today I wanted to talk about why you need to let your characters suffer the consequences of their actions. Now, this is something I've noticed with my own writing, but also with a lot of other writers who are early on in their journey. There can be this temptation with a character that either you really like personally as the author, or a character that you think your audience is going to really like and be attached to, where because this character is so liked, so beloved, you're tempted to let them skip past the consequences of their actions. And this can take all kinds of different forms. It could be, the character goes and does something against the wishes of an authority figure. And the authority figure finds out, but then magically forgives the hero for no real apparent reason. They might offer some kind of flimsy excuse, but for the audience, it just registers as unrealistic. And that leads into one of the, there's really three main reasons why you need to let your characters suffer the consequences of their actions. One is simply that if you don't, it breaks the fiction, right? It becomes unrealistic, it becomes unbelievable if your character is able to go around and essentially do whatever they want, consequence-free, because nobody gets to do that. I mean, the funny thing is, even when you think of like all-powerful characters, like almost inevitably to tell any kind of like sensible, like understandable, relatable story, you have to put some sort of limit on them. I mean, the classic example here is Superman, right? Like, Superman is a character that can basically do anything, but he still has kryptonite. So almost any Superman story is going to use kryptonite at some point because it's like really the only limiting device on Superman. But barring a character who's literally some sort of god or demigod, people have to deal with the consequences of their actions. That's just a reality of human life. And so when you put that into your stories, one, it makes it easier for us to buy into the world and believe what's happening. And it also just makes your characters more relatable, which kind of leads into the second point, which is that when you let your characters experience the consequences of their actions, that creates for good drama, right? That creates for a more vivid, interesting story. Because the reality is that, as human beings, we basically spend our entire lives screwing up. There's no nice way to put it. Either we make a decision with limited information and suffer for the information we didn't have, and then we have to go and adapt to the new circumstance we've created, or we do something that we kind of secretly deep down know is probably the wrong choice, but we have these ways of convincing ourselves that it's the right choice. And so really, when you look at, if you look at the hero's journey structure, this is baked into every step of that structure. You have a hero who has the potential to live out some great quality that human beings aspire to have, and yet to get to the point where they live out that quality and become heroic, right? They need to go through these trials, which all essentially give them a chance to demonstrate the human foibles that we were just talking about. Oftentimes if you look at the struggles that a hero faces, and you peel back the layers, they ultimately represent things that are just basic human failings. Things like laziness, things like lust, greed, the seven deadly sins, right? Either metaphorically or sometimes literally in the action of the plot, your hero will be tempted to fall into those traps. And sometimes they do, right? Sometimes they do. And in really good stories, the hero falls into these traps. We both feel empathy for the hero because we've all been there, but we also get a bit of a warning from the hero, like, ooh, they're getting punished for this now. I'm going to avoid making the decision in my own life. And then when we see the hero come back around, when they somehow manage to dig themselves out of the hole climb out of the hole they just dug themselves, that's relatable too, because we've all dug holes that we need to climb back out of. That's kind of what we're looking for in stories. And then the last reason why you need to let your characters suffer the consequences of their actions is that it makes for clean plotting. And this is something I discovered recently and kind of touched a little bit on in my last video, but if you don't let a character, if character, whatever your character does, if it's a realistic, if you've constructed a realistic character in a realistic world, or at least at the very least a believable character in a believable world, every action they take is going to have some sort of logical consequence or a logical set of consequences that follow. And if you resist that, if you look at those logical set of consequences and you say, no, I don't want that to happen, well, you're going to end up bending over backwards and convoluting your plot in all these weird ways. That's usually when you see the authors start to make really bad decisions, like introducing new characters really late in the story, introducing new plot elements like new superpowers, new locations, introducing all this extraneous stuff, which kind of like I talked about in my last video. If you introduce major plot elements very late into the story, it doesn't matter how well crafted they are, they're not going to resonate because they haven't had time to build up the richness and the context in the reader's mind that they need to resonate. What's interesting is looking at an example of, here's a great example of using, because last time I talked a lot about characters. Here's an example of like a plot element where this comes into play. And I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but I'm feeling the spirit, right? You look at the Eye of Sauron in the Lord of the Rings books, right? Well, imagine how try to imagine that story if the Eye of Sauron only appeared in like the last 50 pages of the last book, right? It wouldn't be nearly this iconic, lasting figure in fantasy literature that's been aped all over the place. The reason why the Eye of Sauron works so well as a force in the story is that it's this constant looming presence. You get little peeks and hints about it all throughout the story, so that by the time that the heroes actually get there, that has resonance. That it's fulfilling a promise that was made earlier by teasing this huge imposing tower that has this evil aura, and it's like by having these hints throughout, you create curiosity in the reader, and then when you finally get there, it fulfills that curiosity, right? And that's really a good thing you should do with any kind of major location in your story. Try to drop those breadcrumbs throughout so that our curiosity is satisfied when we finally get there. So anyway, kind of rambling on, kind of was squeezing two topics into one here, but that is my video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye.